Good morning. Even though we are a week out from Thanksgiving, I hope that you are still thankful. You know, Thanksgiving is really a wonderful expression of the gospel because Thanksgiving says that we can be content with what we have. We don't have to have more. But when we move out of Thanksgiving and into not so much Advent, but into the shopping season, the message that the culture gives us is, unless you get more stuff, you will not be happy. The gospel turns it upside down and says, when you're content with what you have, then you are happy. The world also is a world that runs largely on vengeance. And if something does something to you, even if it is unintentional, you are to seek vengeance on them for their inattention or for whatever they did. Again, even if it wasn't even fully intentional, even if it wasn't fully their fault. But the gospel says no. Rather, we're to be compassionate and gentle with one another. We're to be forgiving. We're to treat other people the way that God treats us. I saw this story recently in Brazil. A young 10-year-old girl just happened to dart out between two cars into traffic. There was a man driving down the road, and he had no time to stop, and he slammed on the brakes, but unfortunately he hit the little girl. She wasn't killed, but she was injured, and an ambulance had to be called, and the man who was the driver was just inconsolable. Now, he didn't really do anything wrong. The little girl jumped out in front of him because she wasn't thinking in the exuberance of childhood, but he was just inconsolable, and he's sobbing on the side of the road. And I want you to see what happens next. And in this video, what you need to know is the man who comes up to him is the little girl's father. And look at what the little girl's father does for that driver. Stunning. I love the way he grabs his head and makes him look at him, and I suppose he was giving him some sort of encouragement, the way that he just wraps him up in his arms. It reminds me of Colossians 3:12-14, where the Bible tells us, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. And we see this father doing all of those things. He could have struck out at that driver. You hit my daughter is hurt, I'm upset, I'm going to have vengeance on you. But instead, he clothed himself with compassion and kindness for that man. He was humble, he wasn't haughty about it and meek, and he was patient with the driver who had hit his daughter, recognizing that the driver really hadn't done anything wrong. Colossians 3 continues, bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other, just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive. And that man, I wonder if the father recognized that there are times in his life where something just happened, and maybe he even made a mistake, and if something was his fault, and someone forgave him. Maybe he was a Christian, and he recognized, God forgave me even when I didn't deserve it. Advent is when we look to the coming of Christ, but Advent also is always looking out into the future. And we look to the fact that, in a sense, you and I, through our inattention and through our sin, both willfully and even unintentionally crucified Christ. We ran over Christ. And what does God do? God responds to us with compassion, and God clothes himself with compassion and love, and God forgives us. And so we too are called to forgive, to bear with one another, to recognize that I could have been that driver, and so I need to have compassion to that driver, and that I need to forgive. And then it concludes, above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. That father had a choice. He could have responded harshly, and few people would have criticized him for that, but had he done that, he would not have brought harmony into that situation. But instead, he brought harmony into that situation, and who knows, he may have created a lifelong friend. The little girl went to the hospital. She was there about a week and recovered completely from her injuries, and she should be fine. And we are left with this wonderful illustration of the gospel. And so let me invite you to, on this day, commit yourselves to the love of God and recognize that you can do things that the world will be astounded by because God is with you. Amen.